The stars above the
You'd be
moon
a
base
fun
always
wife,
felt quiet,
I teased.
like they were watching
The alien
everything without
Warlord
blinking.
Grinned.
James, a young human engineer, sat at a small table inside the common room, laughing with a few soldiers from different alien worlds. He had been working on the neutral moon base for 2 months now, fixing old machines and cleaning up after power failures. Life here was lonely but peaceful. Until she arrived, her name was General Kalara, tall and sharp like a blade with armor that shimmered black and blue. She was a feared alien warlord from a warrior species called the Varkari. That night, she joined the crew for the first time at the dinner table. Sitting across from James, the room grew quiet when she entered. But James, always trying to lighten the mood, cracked a joke. "You'd be a fun wife," he teased with a crooked smile. After watching her outdrink 2 giant lizard warriors in a drinking contest, everyone froze. A few soldiers chuckled nervously. But Kalara didn't laugh. She just stared at him, her golden eyes glowing like fire. Then she smiled just a little. "Slow and strange, fun wife?" she repeated in her deep, calm voice. James nodded, still grinning. "Yeah, imagine the parties," she didn't reply. She stood up slowly and walked out of the room, her boots echoing down the metal hallway. James scratched his head, wondering if he went too far. The others avoided his eyes. One old alien whispered under his breath, "You shouldn't have said that." Later that night, James returned to his quarters, humming a tune and trying not to think too hard. He pressed his palm to the scanner, but the door didn't open. Confused, he tried again. Still nothing. Suddenly, the lights in the hallway dimmed and a hiss echoed behind him. He turned and Kalara was there. She didn't speak, just pressed a button on a small device in her hand. A door behind him opened, and before he could react, she pushed him gently but firmly inside. The chamber locked shut with a metallic clang. James blinked, looking around. This wasn't his room. The walls were covered in strange symbols and glowing blue lines. A round table stood in the middle, and above it, a small drone recorded everything. Kalara stepped in, sealing the door behind her. She faced him, her voice calm but cold. "In my culture, what you said is not a joke." James raised his hands, confused. "What? About being a fun wife? That was just a joke. To joke about marriage with a Varkari is to propose. Human," she said, walking around the table slowly. "If I do not answer the proposal, I appear weak," she continued. "If I accept it, I must complete the bonding ritual." James laughed nervously. "Okay, now you are joking, right?" But her face said otherwise. The drone above their heads beeped once. Recording started. Kalara didn't blink. "You have 2 choices. Earthman, withdraw your claim by dueling me in battle, or stay and finish the vow." James backed up toward the wall. Wait, hold on. I don't want to duel anyone, and I definitely didn't mean to marry anyone either." "Intent does not change what the people now believe," she said. "My council is watching, my bloodline is listening." A long silence stretched between them. James swallowed. "Can't we just explain it was a misunderstanding?" She shook her head. "Then they will ask why you were not punished, or why I allowed it, and they will see me as weak, unworthy of command." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a red siren flashed across the walls, an alarm. Kalara touched her earpiece and spoke quickly in her language. Then she looked at James, her voice now softer. "The base is under attack." James felt his heart race. "What? Who?" "I do not know," she said, walking to a hidden door behind the chamber. "But I will not leave this room without knowing your choice." James stood frozen as the sirens blared louder outside. Through the small window, he could see shadows running, ships rising, weapons drawn, and yet, inside the sealed chamber, time stood still. Kalara stood tall, her hand on the door's lock. "If you walk through this door with me," she said slowly, "you walk as my chosen. If you stay, I will go alone." James looked at her. This fierce alien warrior who treated his joke like a vow. He didn't know what to say, but he knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same after this. And outside, the war had already begun. The sealed chamber was silent except for the low hum of energy around its walls. James stood still, watching Kalara as she tapped the control panel and locked the inner door again. Outside, sirens continued to wail and distant explosions shook the ground beneath their feet. But inside, the air felt heavy, not with danger, but with something deeper, something older. Tradition. Kalara turned to face him, her golden eyes unreadable. "This is not about you or me," she said calmly. "It is about the blood of my people and the laws that shape us." James blinked, still trying to process everything. I didn't mean to start anything, he said, his voice softer now. I was just joking. I swear. Kalara walked to the center of the chamber where the hologram table stood with a wave of her hand. Glowing symbols danced in the air, forming a projection. A room filled with alien elders appeared, tall, armored figures sitting in a circle of stone. They were watching him even now. You spoke a bonding phrase in public, Kalara said. The Varkari do not take such words lightly. One of the elder figures in the hologram spoke in a deep, ancient voice. He has claimed our daughter of war. Another added, he must prove he is worthy or bleed for dishonor. James took a step back, his hands raised. Whoa, I didn't claim anyone. Okay. I was just trying to be funny. Kalara didn't move, but her voice dropped lower. That is the problem, James. On Earth, your words are playthings. Here, words are blades. She deactivated the hologram and looked him in the eye. I will not force you, she said gently. But if you walk away now, my council will demand I duel you publicly and spill your blood. And if I refuse, they will strip my title. James sat down on a nearby bench, putting his head in his hands. This is insane, he whispered. I'm just a tech guy from Earth, not some space prince. Kalara knelt in front of him, surprising him. I do not want a prince, she said. I want truth. You said I would be a fun wife. She smiled faintly. Perhaps. I liked hearing it, James looked up slowly. You liked it? Kalara nodded. No one has spoken to me like that in years. They fear me, or want power from me. You only wanted to make me laugh. For a moment, either spoke. Outside, more explosions rattled the base, but they stayed still. Then Kalara stood, her armor creaking slightly. There is a secret passage under this chamber, she said, pointing to the floor panel. It leads to a safe zone in the lower tunnels. James raised an eyebrow. So why are we still here? Kalara looked away, then back at him, her voice softer now. Because I do not want to escape with a stranger. I want to know who you really are, James sighed. Standing up and walking to the wall, he placed his palm against it, feeling the vibration of distant battle. I fix machines, I don't fight wars, he said. I miss coffee, I hate the food here. And I never thought I'd end up locked in a room with an alien warlord talking about marriage. Kalara chuckled. A low, rough sound. I never thought I would meet a human who could outdrink Vorkon beasts and still smile. James turned, smiling slightly. You remembered that, huh? I remember everything, she replied, and I know what choice I must make. Before James could speak, the chamber's lights changed from red to blue. The hologram reactivated, this time showing a live feed of the battlefield. Ships were landing outside, enemy symbols glowing red across their hulls. This attack is not random, Kalara said, her tone now sharp and cold. They are here for me and maybe for you. Me? James stepped back. Why me? You bonded with me before the council, she said. You may be seen as a target. Or a threat. The walls shook again, and sparks flew from one corner of the room. Time was running out. Kalara walked to a panel and pressed her palm against it, unlocking the floor hatch. Come, she said. We must move, James hesitated, then stepped forward as the hatch opened. A soft blue light glowed below, leading to a hidden staircase before she descended. Kalara paused. She turned to James, her voice low and serious. If we survive this, she said, you must decide. Will you take back your words with blade and blood, or will you become more than a joke? James stared at her, his mind spinning, and then he followed her into the dark. The moon base trembled above them, but below, a different kind of fire had just been lit. The stairs beneath the chamber were steep, made of old metal and glowing softly from thin blue lines along the walls. James followed Kalara closely, his heart pounding like a hammer above them. The base shook again as something exploded far away. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the air smelled like burning metal. Where are we going? James whispered. Kalara didn't look back. To the old tunnels built before the new command center. They lead to a shielded room where my personal ship is hidden. James nearly tripped on a loose step, catching himself on the wall. So you had a secret escape this whole time? Of course, she said. I am not a fool. They reached the bottom of the stairs, entering a narrow hallway filled with flickering lights and strange writing carved into the walls. It felt ancient, like a forgotten part of the moon. James could hear distant shouting from above, gunfire, metal clashing, and screams. He tried not to think about it as they moved. Kylara touched the wall panels with her palm. Opening sealed doors and closing them behind them, it was clear. She knew this place well. "I don't understand," James said, still breathless. "Why would someone attack a neutral base?" Kylara's voice was cold. "Because I'm here." She paused at the next door and looked at him. "My enemies don't want peace," she said. "They want power. And your joke, your proposal, may have given them a reason to act." James frowned. "How can my words cause war?" "You are human," she said softly. "That makes you dangerous." He blinked. "Dangerous? Me? I'm just a guy who fixes lights and repairs generators." "You are from Earth," Kylara replied. "The one world no empire has conquered. Some fear what happens if Varkari and humans join forces." They passed through another tunnel. This one filled with crates and old machines. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the metal. Footsteps. Kylara raised her hand, signaling James to stop. Her eyes scanned the dark, sharp and alert without a word. She reached behind her back and pulled out a small curved blade. "Stay here," she whispered, disappearing around a corner. James pressed himself against the wall, trying not to breathe too loudly. His hands were sweaty and his legs were shaking. He hated this. He wasn't a soldier. He wanted to be back in his room with bad coffee and boring alarms, not hiding underground with an alien warrior. A shout, a crash, and then silence. James peeked around the corner and saw Kylara returning, dragging an unconscious soldier in enemy colors. She dropped him beside the crates and wiped her blade. "One of the scouts," she said. "They know these tunnels, too." James looked at the body. "Are they dead?" "Sleeping," she replied, "for now." They continued moving, turning corner after corner until they reached a large round door. Kylara placed both hands on a scanner and whispered something in her language. The door groaned open, revealing a hidden chamber glowing with golden light. Inside was something James had never seen before, a small, sleek ship, resting quietly like a sleeping bird. It was beautiful, covered in silver armor with blue lights running along its wings. "This is your ship?" James asked, stepping closer. Kylara nodded. "My escape, my sanctuary." Suddenly her legs gave out and she dropped to her knees. James rushed to her side. Hey. What's wrong?" He saw the dark liquid on her armor, blood. "You're hurt," he said, panic rising. "I was struck earlier," she said through clenched teeth. "Didn't feel it until now." James helped her lie down, his hands shaking. He looked around the room and spotted a glowing pod in the corner. It looked like a high-tech medical bed. He ran to it, touching buttons and trying to understand its interface. But the machine spoke in her language. Nothing made sense. Kylara coughed, her voice weak. "It will only open for bonded DNA." James turned to her slowly. "Wait, you mean me?" She nodded. "You claimed me. That makes your blood mine." James hesitated, then pressed his hand against the scanner. It beeped, paused, then opened, releasing a soft blue mist. He carried her to the pod carefully and placed her inside. The machine closed, humming softly as healing lights began to pulse. She looked up at him through the glass, her voice barely a whisper. "You didn't run," James touched the glass, his voice trembling. "You saved me first. I'm just returning the favor." She smiled faintly as her eyes closed. The machine continued its quiet work. Outside, another tremor shook the base. James turned toward the ship's control panel, realizing he might have to fly it. But before that, he whispered to himself, "I came here to fix machines, and now I might be flying a queen to war." The door to the tunnel flashed red. More enemies were coming, and this time he couldn't count on Kylara to save him. Not yet. The healing pod glowed softly, filling the secret chamber with a faint blue light. James stood beside it, watching Kylara's chest rise and fall inside the glass. Her armor was removed by the machine, revealing pale silver skin and strange marks across her body that looked like glowing runes. He had seen battle scars before, but these looked alive, pulsing faintly like veins of light. He pressed his palm to the glass, whispering to himself, "Come on, don't die on me." Outside the room, muffled explosions echoed through the tunnels, shaking dust from the ceiling. The war was still raging above, but down here, time seemed frozen. James glanced at the ship parked behind him, its engines silent and waiting. He didn't know how to fly it, didn't even know where to go. But he knew one thing, he wasn't leaving her. After a few long minutes, The pod beeped softly. The glass slowly lifted, releasing a cool mist that brushed against his face. Kalara gasped and opened her eyes, glowing brighter than before. She sat up weakly, breathing hard. You activated it. James smiled with relief. Yeah, seems like your machine likes me. Kalara looked at him for a moment, then laughed softly. It recognized your blood. He frowned, confused. My blood? She touched the mark glowing faintly on her wrist. The bonding ritual was not only cultural, it was biological. When I saved you from the explosion 2 days ago, our blood mixed when I was cut. The machine now reads us as connected. James blinked. So what does that mean exactly? Kalara smiled faintly. It means you are no longer just a joke. You are now bound to me, through the oldest law of my kind. James stared at her, speechless. You mean I'm really— Yes, she interrupted, her golden eyes holding his. You are my mate. He ran a hand through his hair, laughing nervously. Wow, that escalated fast. Kalara tilted her head. You sound afraid. I'm just confused, he admitted. Yesterday I was fixing power cables, and now I'm married to an alien warlord. She smiled slightly. Fate is efficient. Before he could reply, the ship's alert system began to beep rapidly. A hologram appeared above the control panel showing red signals approaching through the tunnels. They found us, Kalara said, standing shakily. They will breach this chamber soon. James grabbed a small laser tool from his belt, holding it like a weapon even though it wasn't. Any chance your pod also gives flying lessons? He asked, trying to sound calm. Kalara gave a soft laugh. Stay close to me. She stepped to the ship and pressed her hand to a scanner. The ramp opened and the ship's engines began to hum. As they boarded, the heavy door at the far end of the tunnel began to shake under enemy fire. Metal groaned, dust fell, and James's heart raced. The ship's systems came alive, lights flickering across the dashboard. Strap in, she said. This will be rough. The tunnel door burst open just as the ship lifted off the ground. A group of armored soldiers stormed in, firing energy rounds that exploded across the floor. Kalara slammed a lever forward, and the ship shot upward like a comet through a vertical shaft. The sudden speed pushed James back in his seat, his breath catching in his throat. Behind them, explosions echoed like thunder, but the ship broke through the ceiling and burst into open air. The moon's pale sky spread around them, covered with streaks of fire and smoke. Wrecked ships burned across the horizon, and the main base was in ruins. Kalara maneuvered between falling debris with precision and fury. James looked at her hands, steady and sure. Despite her wound still glowing faintly, she was more than a warrior. She was a force of nature. But then she winced, her arm trembling, and the ship tilted dangerously. James grabbed the controls. I've got it. She glanced at him, surprised. You can fly? Sort of, he said, remembering simulator training back on Earth. Mostly in games. She gave a half smile. Then this is a very expensive game. He leveled the ship just as a blast grazed the wing. Shaking the cockpit, an enemy fighter was behind them. Firing rapidly, Kalara hit the comms. Varkari Command, respond. Static, only static. They've jammed communications, she said. Clenching her jaw, James looked at her. Then it's just us. She nodded slowly. Yes, just us. He turned sharply, sending the ship diving between two canyons of jagged black rock. The enemy followed close behind. Kalara activated a hidden switch and released 2 small drones from the wings. The drones shot backward, exploding in bright bursts of light. The enemy ship was caught in the blast and spiraled down. James let out a breath of relief. Nice shot. Kalara looked at him, her voice softer. We make a good team. Silence filled the cockpit as the fires faded behind them. For the first time since the attack, the sky was quiet. James looked out the window, seeing the curve of the distant planet reflecting the starlight. He finally spoke. So what happens now? Kalara looked at him, her golden eyes glowing faintly. They will come for us, both friends and enemies, and you must decide whether to stand beside me. James swallowed, staring at the endless space ahead. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for some reason, the idea of leaving her didn't feel right anymore. He smiled faintly. Well, I guess I better learn how to be a good husband. Kalara laughed softly. Good, she said, because the stars are watching. Outside, the ship disappeared into the silver mist of the moon's horizon. But deep inside the chamber they left behind, the drone recorder still blinked. The entire bonding had been recorded, proof for every empire that the impossible had happened. A human and a Varkari empress bound by blood and by fate. The stars outside the ship's window seemed brighter now. James sat in the co-pilot seat, still gripping the edge of the dashboard. His knuckles were white, his shirt soaked in sweat. Kaylara leaned back beside him, eyes half closed, breathing deeply as her body recovered from the earlier wound. They were flying through open space now, far from the burning moon base. But peace didn't follow them, it only paused. "We're safe for now," James whispered. Kaylara opened her eyes slowly. No one is ever safe when politics are watching. She turned to the control panel and tapped a few commands. A hologram blinked to life above them. The symbol of the Varkari Empire glowed like a golden flame. James stared at it, uneasy. "I'm guessing that's your family crest?" Kaylara gave a small nod. "That, and the warning sign to everyone who wants to challenge it." The screen changed, now showing faces, alien faces of all shapes and colors. Nobles, leaders, warriors, and spies. The great council of the 9 systems. Each one now aware that Kaylara had survived the attack. Each one now receiving the recorded footage of her bonding to a human male. The drone in the chamber had streamed it across secured royal channels. The universe had seen it happen. Kaylara sat up straighter, her voice calm but sharp. "They will call me foolish, emotional, desperate, but they cannot deny the bond. It is sacred. Even to our enemies." James leaned forward. "So, what now? I get knighted? Or thrown out an airlock?" Kaylara actually smiled. "Neither," she said. "First, we go to my homeworld. My people must meet you. Test you. Some will want to kill you quietly." James flinched. "That's comforting. Others will try to take you from me, to control you, or use you to weaken me." James tilted his head. "Okay, that's worse." She placed her hand on his, firm and warm. "But I will not let them," she said, her voice fierce. "You are not just my bond, you are my choice." They entered hyperspace in a flash of blue light. When they emerged, a giant planet filled the window, dark green clouds, silver oceans and glowing cities built into mountains. "Varkari's prime," Kaylara whispered. Her home. As they approached the landing docks, a fleet of royal guards appeared, surrounding them like shadows. "They're early," Kaylara muttered. "Should I smile?" James asked, trying to hide his nerves. "Don't smile," she replied. "They'll think you're mocking them." The ship landed with a soft thud. When the doors opened, a crowd of nobles and armored guards stood waiting on the silver platform. James stepped out behind Kaylara. Trying to look calm, he felt every eye on him. He was the only human on the entire planet. A tall noble stepped forward, his armor shining with golden edges. His face was long and cruel, eyes cold. "This is the human?" the noble asked with disgust. Kaylara answered firmly, "Yes." "Does he even know our ways?" "Our oaths?" the noble snapped. James opened his mouth, but Kaylara spoke over him. "He knows loyalty and courage. That is more than I can say for some of you." Whispers ran through the crowd like wind. The noble sneered. "Then let him prove it. By the right of standing." James turned to Kaylara. "That sounds painful." "It's not," she said, then added, "unless you fail, inside the palace." James was dressed in ceremonial robes. He stood at the center of a glowing circle, surrounded by Varkari nobles. The right of standing was not a fight. It was a test of presence. He must face 3 challenges, mental, moral, and emotional, without breaking or fleeing. If he passed, he'd be recognized as Kaylara's official mate. If he failed, he'd be marked unworthy and exiled. The first test came as a puzzle, a holographic map of Varkari star routes. He had to find the one hidden path that didn't exist. He stared at it. Remembering Kaylara's lesson in seeing what's not shown, he chose a blank space. Empty. Forgotten. The judges nodded, impressed. The second test was a question. If Kaylara was taken hostage, and peace was near, but saving her meant war again, what would you choose? James didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, "She would never forgive herself if her life cost peace. But I would save her anyway." Silence. Then one judge whispered, "Honest." The final test was the hardest. He stood before a simulated version of Kaylara, bleeding. Begging him to run, it was fake, but the emotions felt real. James stepped forward, holding her tight. "I'm not leaving you." "Real or not," he said. The simulation ended. Kaylara stepped forward, her eyes glistening. She placed her hand on his chest. And in front of the council she said one word. Mate, the nobles bowed their heads, even the cruel one did not speak again. James looked at her, stunned. Did I really pass? Kalara nodded, smiling. You passed with your heart. From that moment on, the galaxy knew. A human had touched the throne of the Varkari Empire. Not with force, not with weapons, but with love. The royal halls of Varkaris Prime were quiet after sunset. Stars glowed through the high glass ceilings, bathing the palace in silver light. But the silence tonight was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the air was holding its breath. James stood at the balcony outside his guest chamber. The cool wind touched his face. But his mind wasn't calm. Since the bonding ceremony, he had received smiles and handshakes. But behind them, he saw the fear. He wasn't one of them. He was a human with the heart of their empress, and that made him dangerous. Kalara hadn't returned from the war meeting. She had been gone for hours. James glanced at the tall doors across the courtyard. Her private chambers, guards stood outside, motionless as statues, but James could feel something was wrong. Suddenly he heard a sound behind him, a whisper soft as silk. James turned fast, nothing was there. He stepped inside his room, the doors sliding shut. And then he saw the shadow. It moved from the far corner, fast and silent before he could shout. A blade slashed toward him. James ducked. The knife grazing his arm, he fell back, grabbing a decorative rod from the wall. The assassin came again, masked and dressed in black. James blocked the next attack, barely. He kicked the attacker away and ran to the door. But it didn't open, locked from the outside. The assassin circled him like a wolf. You should not be here. Earthborn. The voice was distorted. James kept his grip tight on the rod. Tell that to your empress. She won't survive the night, the voice replied coldly. Neither will you. Before the killer could strike again, the wall behind them exploded. Guards rushed in, weapons raised. The assassin threw a smoke bomb and vanished into the mist. James coughed, eyes burning, as strong arms pulled him out of the room. He stumbled into the hallway, blood on his sleeve, heart racing. Kalara arrived seconds later, her cloak flying behind her. She pushed through the guards, her eyes going straight to James. You're hurt, she whispered, her voice shaking. I'm fine, he said, though his arm throbbed. Someone was inside my room. Kalara's expression changed from worry to fury. She turned to her general. Lock down the palace and seal every gate and let no one in or out. James leaned against the wall. Breathing hard, he looked at her. They said you wouldn't survive the night. Kalara's eyes narrowed. Then I won't sleep. That night, the palace became a fortress. Hallways were guarded. Windows sealed, food scanned. Kalara kept James close. Not as a guest, but as her equal. He sat beside her in the war room as generals argued over the attack. They breached the guest wing without triggering alarms, one said. Only someone inside the royal staff could have helped them, another added. Kalara slammed her fist on the table. We find the traitor tonight. She stood and walked toward James, her voice lowering. They targeted you first, she said. Because if they kill you, the bond breaks. James looked at her, confused. I thought it couldn't be undone. It can't, she said softly. But without you alive, it means nothing. Silence hung between them. She touched his hand gently, her armor cold but her fingers warm. They fear us together, she whispered, because we are new, unpredictable. Because I love you. James froze. Heart pounding, the words hung in the air like stars. Unexpected, bright and impossible to ignore. He didn't know what to say, but he didn't need to. She already knew. Later that night, James was escorted back to a different chamber, one connected directly to Kalara's quarters. Guards were posted at every door, but even so, Kalara gave him a small blade. Keep it under your pillow, she said. I won't need it, he replied. She leaned in close. Then keep it anyway for me. He couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floor made him sit up. Every flicker of light made his hand move to the blade. He wasn't a soldier, but now he had something to protect. Hours passed in silence. Then a faint sound, metal scraping softly. James grabbed the knife and moved toward the door. He opened it slowly and saw a figure cloaked in gray slipping past the courtyard. He followed, staying low. Through the hallway, past the inner garden. Into the kitchen corridors, the figure stopped, opened a secret panel in the wall and disappeared. James waited, then signaled the guards minutes later. The secret passage was opened, and inside, They found the palace cook. He had been paid by one of the outer house lords to poison Kalara's meal the next morning. It was not just an assassination. It was a silent war. When dawn broke, the cook was arrested, and Kalara stood before her court. She declared her intent to purge all enemies hiding in noble shadows. And at her side stood James, not behind her, not beneath her, but beside her. When she spoke, she said, "This is the man who saved my life while others plotted behind my back. He is not just my mate. He is my trust." And the court, for the first time, bowed not just to the Empress, but to the human who had survived the Night of Knives. The sun over Varkaris Prime rose slowly, spreading gold across the black stone palace walls. James stood at the edge of the skywalk, looking down at the capital city. Tall towers glowed with soft light. Skyships moved like birds, and the people below were already busy. But inside his chest, nothing felt calm. Today was the day he had to decide. Behind him, Kalara approached quietly, her armor gone, dressed in a simple royal robe. Her hair was braided back, and the mark of the Empress glowed faintly on her neck. She stood beside James, watching the same city. "You haven't slept," she said gently. He shook his head. Too much thinking. A soft wind moved through the air. Brushing against them both, she waited, giving him space. But her eyes stayed on him. James finally asked, "If I go back to Earth, what happens to you?" Kalara answered without emotion, "I continue ruling, I face my enemies, I fight wars." James turned to her. "Alone?" She met his gaze. "I was alone before you." Silence sat between them like a shadow. Then Kalara added more quietly, "But I don't want to be alone again." James looked back at the city. At the rising sun, the choice wasn't simple. If he returned to Earth, he would be safe, normal again. He'd be called a hero, maybe even rich. But he'd always wonder about the woman who once closed a chamber door and whispered, "You are mine," and if he stayed, he'd be walking into fire, always hunted, always tested. A human in an alien court, a mate to a warrior queen. A voice crackled from the comm device on his wrist. It was Admiral Lorne from Earth's Diplomatic Council. "James Porter, we've cleared a transport route," the voice said. "You have 20 minutes to meet the shuttle if you want extraction." James didn't answer right away. He just looked at Kalara. She didn't speak either. She didn't beg, didn't plead. She was giving him the power to choose. Even if it broke her heart, James took a deep breath. "You never forced me," he said slowly. "From the beginning. You could have locked me in chains, but you didn't. You protected me, trained me, healed me." Kalara lowered her eyes. "I knew from the start you were different. You saw me as a person, not a title." James stepped closer. "You joked with me, you bled for me, and you let me make my own path. I can't walk away from that." Kalara's eyes widened, glowing faintly as she whispered, "Are you sure?" James nodded, smiling softly. "I've made my choice." He tapped the comm device and spoke clearly. "Command. Cancel my extraction. I'm not coming back." Static filled the line for a moment, then the Admiral's voice returned, sharp and confused. "Repeat that, Porter?" James replied. "I said I'm not coming back." He turned off the device and removed it, placing it gently on the stone edge of the skywalk. Kalara stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly. "You will be hated by many," she said. "You may never see your world again." James took her hand, steady and warm. "I wasn't really living there," he said softly. "Not like I am here." She touched her forehead to his. In her culture, it meant complete trust, complete unity, and this time he leaned in, meeting her halfway that evening. The court was gathered again, nobles in shimmering armor, soldiers lined in silence, and banners of every house waving above. James walked beside Kalara through the great hall, dressed in formal robes woven with gold thread. He no longer walked behind her, he walked with her. They reached the steps of the high throne. Where Kalara turned and faced the court, she spoke with pride. "Today, we do not just bind two lives, we bind two worlds. There will be resistance," she added. "But resistance is only the fear of change." She turned to James, raising his hand. "This human stood against death for me, for this empire, and for truth. He is not my weakness, he is my strength." Some nobles nodded. Others looked away, but no one interrupted, not anymore. A ceremonial sword was brought forward. James took it, not to fight, but to swear an oath. He held it to his chest, speaking the words Kalara had taught him. "I vow to protect this empire, this throne, and the heart that stands beside it." Kalara took the sword next. And I vow to shield you from every star that burns with hate. Together, they faced the people. Together, they bowed to no one. Far beyond Varkari's news spread across star systems, screens flickered with one image, a human standing beside an alien empress. Hands clasped, eyes locked, not as enemies, not as conqueror and conquered, but as equals. And though some laughed, some cursed, and some plotted in shadows, one thing was certain: the galaxy had changed, not with war, but with love and behind sealed palace doors. Kalara looked at James and whispered, "You teased me once, remember?" He smiled. "Yeah. You said I'd be a fun wife." She grinned. Then she sealed the chamber shut, and this time, he didn't want to leave.